everyone, and welcome to Self-Marketing Preparation. My name is Dylan and I'll be your facilitator for this workshop. Before we get started, a couple things to take note of is 1, you have the power to pause this video or jump around as you see fit. And number 2, try your best to take notes. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and either myself or anyone from my team will be able to get back to you as soon as we can. In addition, I prepared another handout which has some different examples in regards to resumes and cover letters. All right, let's get started. So first thing, what is self-marketing preparation? So this workshop is designed to prepare you to market your skills and qualifications to future employers. We'll be looking at 3 major topics over the next couple of minutes. 1, the fundamentals of self-marketing. We'll be looking at job search planning, research, and networking. Number 2, self-marketing tools, mainly focusing on resume development and cover letter development. And last but not least, we have interview skills, how to approach them, and how to make sure that you give your best mark in the interview stage. Job search planning. So when I'm with my participants, usually I ask them to take a moment to sit down and reflect. In order for us to know what our next step is, we have to know where we're coming from. So this is a great time for you to take note of all the skills that you've gained over the course of your career and the course of life, and all the experiences that you have faced. Pleasant experiences and also not so pleasant experiences. Again, as we start to understand our past, we'll know what to do moving forward with our future. Now, as you're applying for your job search, try your best to have a little bit of wiggle room. You might not find the job that you absolutely love and adore, but you never know until you try. Sometimes things surprise you, and I really want you to have that open mind as you're job searching. Make sure that as you're job searching that you are doing as much research as possible, and we'll be looking at research in the next couple of slides. Prepare your marketing tools, and then finally, approach employers. One thing to really take note of is at the very bottom it says the fit or corporate culture. This is the compatibility between you, the job that you're going into, and the company that you're going to be working for. It's really good that we're able to find a work opportunity that hits both of those targets. Yes, you want to be skilled at the job that you're going to be doing, and you also want to be valued and a part of a team that you're going to be working for. So try your best as you're doing your research and as you're doing your job search to find those areas. So why is research so important? Research allows us to access information that could either be used to share, again in a marketing tactic, or to be held onto. So some of the ways that we could research companies and jobs is first reviewing that job description and looking at the company's website. We'll be able to see everything that it takes to do the job really well, and some of the pieces that created the team that you're about to work for. Discuss with people that you know. Check with your current networks. Maybe your friends, your family members, or even your peers have experiences with a company that you're trying to get into. Ask them their experiences. But of course, every time that we ask for someone's opinion, please take it with a grain of salt. Or use your critical thinking, because their experiences will drastically change from your experiences. Another form of research is asking employers directly. This is where we go into the ideas of tours and informational interviews, or if you have the opportunity, try volunteering. So as you're researching opportunities, try your best to take note of the following. Look for the company's mission statement, vision statement, and what do they value. Look at the products or services that they offer, their location and hours of operation, and again, anything that's going to help you identify the company culture. Research can also help you in anticipating for discussion topics that will be used mainly in interviews. So what is networking? Well, networking is the act of developing and building relationships with people. We do this to have a better understanding of all the opportunities that are out there for us. So when it comes to networking with people, just like everything else, we need a little bit of preparation and practice. Because you're going to be in a position where you'll be meeting with potential employers or people who might help us with those types of jobs, we want to know what we're going to say and, of course, how we're going to say it. One without the other is going to cause a little bit of miscommunication. So strong content, strong delivery. Talk to your friends, your family members, your peers, or even your employment consultant. Access those people first before you start chipping away at who they know. Start stepping out of your comfort zone. Try your best to attend different job fairs or networking events. If the event is public, bring a friend with you, bring someone you trust. It does help with the nerves. But anything in terms of a private event, please, please, please do not bring someone with you. We want to see that you're independent and capable of working by yourself. All right, we're going to go to part 2 of our workshop, which is self-marketing tools. Self-marketing tools include any of the following that's on this list, and then some. So the first 3, the resume, the cover letter, and the reference list, are usually typed up documents that are submitted to an employer. These are considered our written documents or written marketing tools. So the first 3, the resume, the cover letter, and references, are typed up documents that we will present to an employer. These will be considered our written self-marketing tools. The personal pitch or elevator speech and the interview answers are more of a verbal approach, which will then become our verbal marketing tools. So some general notes in regards to self-marketing. 1, try your best to keep a consistent appearance and a consistent message. You want to make sure that what we're saying is all aligned, starting from the resume, through the cover letter, all the way to the interview answers. If you're looking at the example, you'll notice that John's resume, cover letter, and reference lists are identical, down to the font size, style, and how everything is laid out. Try your best to make sure that your content is easy to read and understand, and again, is tailored down to the job that you're applying for. At the very end, give it your stamp of approval. Even if you're getting support from someone else, whether it be a professional at OFE or someone in your life, you want to make sure that whatever you're presenting comes from you. So look at the wording, the language, and the look. So what are resumes? Resumes are ideally a 1-page to 2-page document that will summarize your qualifications and your skill sets. It's often used as a referencing point, not just for you when you're creating your answers, but for employers and for your networks, especially employers. When you go to an interview and you share an example or a story that more or less isn't on the resume, and you do that quite often, it does create a disconnect, wondering, why didn't you place that experience in this resume if it was that important to your stories and your examples? So try to think of stories that come from there first before thinking about the external experiences that you have. Okay, so here are some tips to help you with formatting your resumes. So 2 commonly used styles that we use at OFE. 1 is the chronological or traditional style. This is ideal if you have really strong work experience or you're doing work that is, again, related or closely related to what you've done before. What you're going to notice is that demonstrated statements or bullet points are placed underneath each entry of work. The functional resume or skill-based resume is skill-focused. In this case, we're trying to collect a pool of different skills that we've gained from all of our experiences, both in and out of work. If you're switching jobs, entering the workforce for the first time, or re-entering the workforce, this is going to be one of the best styles to use because it's for everyone. What are demonstrated statements? So all of the bullet points that you see are actually called demonstrated statements. These are used to help the employer better understand you and your capabilities. To make a really strong demonstrated statement, it's going to need a few things. 1, try to give it an action. 2, include some form of measurement. That means using specific titles, keywords, values, and even time. And number 3, a little bit of description. Again, our goal with the demonstrated statement is to make sure that our marketing is as clear as possible in order for the employer to understand us better. On my resume, I wrote, facilitates employment-ready workshops to an average of 20 job seekers weekly. I facilitate, which is the action word. Some measurements could be how many job seekers, which is 20, and how often, which is weekly. And a little bit of a description is, what type of workshops do I teach? They're employment-ready workshops. That statement is going to change drastically if I said to you, facilitates workshops to job seekers. One is more specific, one is more general. And we want to do our best to be as specific as possible, especially if it's in line with the job that we're going into. Here's a summarized resume checklist for you. I want to highlight 2 points. The third one says, write abbreviations and acronyms in full to avoid misinterpretation. And in the last bullet point, it says remove references available upon request. And the reason being is employers already expect their candidates to come with references. Instead, take that statement out and try to put in a new demonstrated statement elsewhere in that document. Next, I want to highlight something called an applicant tracking system, or ATS, which is a computerized pre-screening tool used to assist with recruitment. So we usually notice these recruitment tools in medium-sized to large-sized companies. And how it works is that the employer will enter in information, either in the form of skill sets, keywords, numbers, you name it, usually based off the job description and some of the company's information, and it'll scan every document that comes its way. If your document does not have enough of these keywords or phrases, your document sits in limbo. It doesn't really go anywhere. Because the computer isn't smart enough to really think for it itself, people who are considered qualified for the position or overqualified or know that they're skilled in getting that job might find themselves stuck. So this is a prompt for you to make sure that you follow up with every application if and whenever possible. Next, we'll be looking at cover letters. Now, although a cover letter is only one page, it is going to be a very powerful one-pager. And the reason being is because, one, it's used to formally introduce yourself to an employer. It allows you to dispel any concerns or red flags that might appear. Maybe you don't have the 3 years of experience that they're looking for, but you make it up from volunteering and other experiences. This is how we could dispel any of those concerns. Or maybe you have 18 years of experience in this field and they're sitting there thinking you might be overqualified. This is where we could talk about what challenges that we are going to face and how open we are to learning from the company. If you can, try your best to stand out. So we'll look at different ways in the next couple of slides. So here are some tips for you guys when writing your cover letter. And here are different parts of a cover letter. Usually every letter that you're going to write to an employer is going to have many of these pieces. Really keep in mind the content section, the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So, starting with the introduction, of course our goal is to try to stand out from others. So try to answer interview questions, especially the common ones such as, why do you want to work here, or why should I hire you, and what is your greatest strength? By answering questions at the beginning, we don't have to wait for that interview at the very end. Because interviews, unfortunately, aren't given to every job that you apply for. So why not take this opportunity to start selling yourself really well at the beginning in order for you to get that interview towards the end. Try your best to share your motivation and your reasoning. Give the employer a reason to care. You might have heard that employers look for passion. You don't have to love every single piece of this job, but it must give you enough energy to do the job and to really care about it in some capacity. If you can, share your personal experiences. That really tells the employer that you buy into their business or be a part of their customer base. And if you can, share or demonstrate unique or desired skills. So as we go through the persuasion or the body section, this is where you start to convince the employer that you're the best person suited for this position. Try your best to highlight at least 3 to 5 ideas that you think are going to be beneficial for them, very similar to the highlights of qualification section on your resume. Make sure that you're prioritizing information by importance and also not just repeating what's on that resume document. Do a little bit of connection. Choose one of your resume pieces and explain how it connects to the job and how it's going to be used on that job. As you're wrapping up the letter, try to do so with the same positivity and interest as the rest of the document. Thank them for their time. If you can, try to reintroduce your strong skills or strong viewpoints and to share motivation and reasoning. When it comes to thinking collaboratively, try your best to talk about ideas that are mutually beneficial. You don't want to just share things that are going to help you grow and succeed. You also want to consider how the company is also going to grow and succeed through your work. If you're sitting there wondering, how come this employer rarely hires? Then maybe an introductory letter is going to be useful for you. It's the exact same structure and style as the cover letter. The only difference is that this is for future discussion. You want to work for a company one day, so let's start planting the seed of you being the only person to think about later on. So try your best to find a job description that's closely related in order for you to make the right points, or really sell yourself to working for that company and not just the position. So company fit first, positional fit later. All right, so the last written marketing tool that we're looking at is our references. References are networks who have known you for at least 3 months and sometimes even 6 months, and are able to talk about your skills and qualifications in a very positive and detailed way. When employers look for references, first we look at work-related references, so coworkers, employers, supervisors, etc. And then we have character references. These are people who could talk about your personality and how you are with teams, but not so much how you are in the actual day-to-day work. Character references could be your employment consultant, myself as a facilitator, or even your friends. Also consider people who live in different cities or different countries or parts of the world. We want to make sure that we are choosing people who could talk positively about us. So don't shy away from all of those other references as well. A quick reference checklist. Please make sure that you are asking permission from your references. You do not want to throw them off, especially when they receive a call or a contact from an employer. You want to make sure that you are training and preparing your references in order to get the best results from that interaction. Keep them informed of any changes that happen with your job search, especially if you're applying to switch careers or jobs altogether, and thank them for their time, even if you didn't get the job. On your reference list, another technique to use is to add 1 to 2 sentences of how you know the individual and what kind of topics they're able to discuss with the employer. All right, this brings us to our final part of our workshop, which is all about interview skills. So what are interviews? Well, interviews are sessions that allow both parties, you and the employer, to assess one another to see if the partnership can be developed. What we really want to do is to make sure that we are giving a positive first and lasting impression with that employer by being professional, being relatable or personable, and being present. Sometimes interviews are somewhat of an out-of-body experience, so you have to really train yourself to be focused and present in that session. So here's a quick checklist on what an employer looks for when we are interviewing. Number 3 says determine a candidate's motivation, commitment, and presentation. Essentially what we're looking at for motivation is what brings you to my company? Why are you here? Why do you want to work here? Whereas commitment is what's going to keep you here? What's going to keep you invested? How can I make an investment on you? As an applicant, here are some of the things that you have to make sure that you do. Number 4 says minimize potential negatives. And we do so a lot when we're answering questions. An employer is most likely going to ask you a question that's going to sound negative in many cases because we want to see how you respond to it. We want to see what you share with us. For example, if I told you, tell me about a time that you had to work with a difficult coworker. Right off the bat, we're in a position where we have to talk about a negative experience. I wouldn't say, when I was working at Opportunities for Employment, I had a coworker by the name of John Arbuckle who used to always get into fights. Because I'm bad-mouthing John and I'm creating a negative image of him. What I might say is, when I was working at Opportunities for Employment, I had a coworker who never saw eye to eye with me or never saw eye to eye with other people. That can mean anyone, right? So that's kind of generalizing, but also minimizing potential negatives. Some ways to give a positive impression during the interview include the following. Number 4 says asking insightful questions. Remember, your job is to also take an assessment of the company and the employer. You want to make sure that whatever job that you're going into or opportunity you're going into, that you feel comfortable and you feel like this is going to be the one for you. Insightful questions are questions that aren't going to be answered by a quick Google search or reading the job description or look at the company's website. But again, things that are going to help you make a more informed decision. So towards the end, usually an employer will ask you, do you have any questions? Please prepare at least 3 to 5. So an example that you could use for an insightful question could be when you're meeting with the employer, asking them, how long have you worked for this company? And what do you value about your position or about the company? This gives you an understanding of if there's growth opportunities that are available, what kind of culture you're going to be seeing in an organization, and if someone likes it or not. Usually the third one's really going to give you the understanding of, is this going to be an enjoyable experience or not so enjoyable experience? These are a few things to avoid doing while you're in an interview session. Okay, we're going to look into answering some interview questions, and what you're going to be needing for this section is, of course, research materials, the resume that you're using for the application process, and a list of your supporting ideas. Your main idea is that you're the best person for the job, and all of your supporting ideas is everything that's going to elevate that idea. You need to have a conscious understanding of why you're applying for this job. You have to have patience with yourself, and again, constant reflection and modification as you see fit. All right, now answering common interview questions. So common interview questions are questions such as, why should I hire you? Why did you leave your last job? What is your greatest strength? And what is your greatest weakness? And there's a very simple way of answering any of those questions. First, answer the question. For example, my greatest strength is blank. My greatest weakness is blank. That's the very first place to start. From there, you're going to take your next step. So if the question is positive, so it's not looking for a negative response or asking you to talk about a negative experience, we want to emphasize a positive connection. For example, my greatest strength is I find it very easy to interact with people and develop relationships with them. This will allow me to increase the amount of customers that come through our door and hopefully make them feel at home and welcomed as they are with us. So again, a connection that's going to be in line with the job that you're going into. For questions that are pulling more of a negative experience or response, we want to do our best to minimize the negative impact. For example, why did you leave your last job? If you left your last job due to a bad back, there's going to be some red flags. How do we make sure that there are no red flags moving forward? If it's a weakness question, how do we ensure that that's still not going to be a weakness for you moving on? Now, in addition to some of those common questions, we have the question, tell me about yourself. This is still considered the number one asked questions in interviews. It is a 30-second to 1-minute response and is considered an overview of your qualifications and its relation to the current opportunity. Very similar to a cover letter and interchangeable with a personal pitch or an elevator speech. To share and connect ideas from your past and this current opportunity. If you can, try to give an example of how one of those ideas is going to be used on the job. And finally, expressing what you want. Mutually beneficial. Again, it has to benefit you as the job seeker and the employer that you'll be working for. All right, class, do you feel lucky right now? If you're sitting there wondering why I'm asking this question, welcome to the idea of oddball interview questions. Now, these questions are used to get an unrehearsed or real response from the applicant. Now, although they sound very unique and may throw you off your game, what you're really looking for is what kind of skills or characteristics is the employer looking for based off this question. And then we treat it just like any other question that is common. We take our answer and we apply it back to the job. All right, storytelling questions. Now, a big part of your interview is actually answering both behavior-based and situational-based interview questions. And we do so by using something called the CAR approach. The CAR approach will allow you to share a story that has descriptive language and is presented in a way that is easy to understand. The challenge, the actions, and the results. C stands for challenge. So what you're going to be doing is setting the stage for your audience. You're going to tell them where you were and what was happening around you, of course, based off the question that was asked of you. From there, you're going to talk about some actions. Really try your best to emphasize on what you did as opposed to what a team might have done, because we're hiring you, not the team. So what did you do to help the story move forward? As a result, tell us how the story ended and who was affected. Were you affected because you learned something or it helped you out for next time? Was the person you're working with affected by it in a positive way? The company, the community? It's all up to your story. Try your best to talk about stories that end on a positive note or talk about stories that have you learning. As I had mentioned before, try to think about stories that are on the resume first, and then if you can, talking about stories that are outside the resume. Okay, so again, behavior questions are more about asking your past experience. So we do use the full CAR approach with it. Situation-based questions are actually looking for the future. So these might not have happened to you before, but given the what-if situation, how would you respond to it? Illegal interview questions. Now, these questions discuss topics that should not be asked of either party during the interview. Questions regarding age, race, gender, sexuality, religion, physical or mental status, family status. Again, things that aren't going to be necessary for the job that you're going into. If you were asked any of these questions, you have a couple of options. One, you could respectfully decline the answer. I don't feel comfortable answering this question and I really want to keep this as formal as possible. You could take it from a sense of curiosity. Can you explain to me how my age is going to be a factor at me doing this job? I don't quite see the connection. Or if it doesn't matter to you, answer the question. Again, make a strong connection based off of it. All right, we made it to the end of interviews. The last thing that you want to do is to make sure that you follow some of these pieces. Continue to show interest, especially on your way out the door. You might want to collect some business cards and proper spellings of people's names, and we'll tell you why in just a bit. Don't forget to ask your key questions to an employer. For sure, asking what the next steps are if they were not already presented to you. Finally, do your best to provide a thank you letter or an email within 24 hours. And the purpose of this letter is to do two things. One, we want to make sure that we are still in the minds of the employer even after we leave the session. Thanking them for their time, the knowledge that they were able to share with you is going to go a long way. Number two, if you decide to use an email approach, at least if you made a mistake, you fumbled, or you forgot to mention something, now's the time for you to share that with them. Because maybe that piece is actually what's going to tip the scale in your favor. All right, and that's it. You've done it. You completed the online version of self-marketing preparation. I wish you luck on your job search. Thank you for taking the time to learn with me, and I hope you find work that you enjoy doing at the end of it. This is Dylan, signing off.